Hi, and welcome back to Just Ask the Question. I am your host, Brian Karem. I have a pickup truck, a bag of lime, and a shovel, and I'm here to serve. With me is my good friend, my little sister. I love her to death, Mary Trump. Hi, Mary. How you doing?
Hi, why in the world would those things come in handy? Hmm,
We'll talk about that off camera.
off camera. Yes.
The reason why I asked you here today is you and I have had a long history, well, you much longer than I, with your beloved Uncle Don, Don Donnie and the Donette.
Using the word beloved loosely and incorrectly. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. With a hint of sarcasm in my voice as I say it. Let's, so
Yes.
he's got this 1 point. Well, someone said he's trolling us. It's a 1.776 billion, $1776 billion that he's put
Hmm.
together as a slush fund to the people of January 6th. And though some loathe to describe it as a slush fund, that's exactly what it is. And
Indeed.
and he has said that I don't know. I don't even know where to go. It's I'll start with this. Get your mind around this twist. As part of the settlement with the government that he controls, the government must receive a formal apology from itself for the suit that Donald Trump settled.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, all of this just smells like grifting to me.
Does it? I don't know why. Yeah, this is
I just love your timing and the delivery of that line, but go ahead.
thank you. I I think this more than any of the other horrific and egregious wrongs this man has committed proves to us that this country is just broken, that this can be allowed to stand. I know the Republicans in the Senate pitched a fit and went on vacation. That'll show them.
Yeah.
We know that Donald is going to get this anyway, and nobody's going to do anything to stop him. And we are, to the extent that we have a government, it is so dysfunctional, and it is entirely in the service, it seems, to enriching Donald and whomever he chooses to enrich, and it's entirely in service to his getting vengeance on people, mostly who were just doing their jobs, and rewarding people like the criminals who attacked our Capitol and our Capitol police officers on that horrific day. By just, it wasn't enough to pardon them. Now he has to throw taxpayer money at them, and just to prove how corrupt this is, the acting attorney general Todd Blanche, who I think I used to think he was like Rudolph Hess, but now I think he's more like Himmler. He really wants this job. This is just another audition. The fact that he said that the amount was arrived at by seriously calculating the damages, and it just coincidentally is 1.776 billion, just shows you how out in the open they are with their criminality, because they know they're going to get away with it, and Todd Blanche is going to get his job. It's
Well,
so despicable.
I
Hmm?
say he's out of depth. I'd say he's out of his depth in a mud puddle, but he's not exactly the most. But you're right. He is subservient to the Don, and this anti-weaponization fund was, quote, created to hear and redress claims of Americans who suffered from lawfare, whatever that is, and weaponization defined as the, quote, use of government power to target them for improper and unlawful reasons. Well, you and I have been targeted for improper and unlawful reasons. Can we file a claim?
I plan to. I mean, yeah. According to Blanche, anybody can apply, including those who have committed violent acts against police officers. That is how pro law enforcement the Trump regime is.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
spoke with
it's just a
Karen.
scam. And another thing too to keep in mind is that there are going to be 5 people on a committee to determine who's eligible, and every single one of them is being appointed by Todd Blanche, which is to say Donald.
Yeah, and so your chances of getting any money are slim and none unless you're a January 6th, convicted felon, much like
Right.
the president is a convicted felon.
Yeah.
I spoke earlier today with Harry Dunn. He says to say hello, by the way.
Oh, he's great. Tell
Yeah,
him I say hi.
Harry filed a suit with another officer, and because of what you were just saying, there was the police officers. Now, look, I heard another Republican today say it was the whole thing was staged. There was never a riot, and I'm going, folks, I was actually there. I mean, I had my life threatened that day more than once. It was for it's one of the most documented riots in the history of the United
We
States.
all saw it happening. I mean, they can't. This is the problem. Because Donald does this, they all think that they can convince enough people not to believe their own lying eyes. It's just obscene.
You've said often, and I quote you often on it, by the way, that there is no worst with Donald. It just gets
Right.
worse every day. How worse is this going to get before there's a change?
Use your imagination. We see he is deteriorating
Yeah.
psychologically, emotionally, cognitively every day. And as that happens, he's becoming even more grasping in his ambitions and in his greed. And just getting back to the slush fund, think about this. Donald didn't come up with this idea. He's an
No.
idiot.
Yeah.
There are people in his administration coming
Stephen
up
Miller.
with ways, yes, coming up with ways for Donald to get his hands on more of our money, to come up with scams for him to enrich himself and his useless children, for ways for him to enact even more cruel policies, for ways for him to become even more imperialistic in his ambitions. Like now it's Cuba that he's going to take over. He wants to be president of Venezuela, prime minister of Israel, president of Cuba, president of Canada, president of Greenland. So, and, we know, you and I know, that Donald is just this black hole of need, right? He's an
Yeah.
empty, desperate little man.
Yes.
Um, so people around him also know that, and they're exploiting that very serious weakness by coming up with all this stuff. And again, I'm not saying that Donald isn't responsible. He is, and he's terrible, and he must be held accountable. But he's not the problem anymore. It's all of these people enabling it and allowing it, and that includes every single elected Republican, whether they've run out of town to avoid voting for this slush fund or not. So how much worse can it get? Well, how much more power does somebody like Stephen Miller want? How much more money and control do people running Paramount and Meta and Amazon and Twitter want? That's
All of
how
it.
much worse it can get.
Yeah.
Exactly. They want all of it.
Yeah.
And Donald serves this purpose because we're way past, oh, he's so embarrassing. How can they put up with this? They don't care. He's openly saying, I'm committing crimes against the American people. I want genocide. He's openly saying these things now. So the calculation is vastly different from what a lot of people thought it was. It wasn't about, can he still appeal to the base? Now it's, can he still give these oligarchs more of what they want? Will he? And the answer always is yes. And the more he declines, the easier it becomes to get him to do. I mean, not that he wouldn't do it anyway, but
right.
the more he declines, the more they can get away with.
Well, I sent you a link to the doc, and one of the things that I pointed out in the doc is that all of this that we're seeing now was planted in the first 100 days. I mean, he went after it.
Yeah.
I mean, decriminalizing, giving pardons, and this is just an extrapolation of what occurred. And it's frightening to me how we still can't, especially, look, my colleagues in the press, I'm disappointed in those who are in the White House briefing room these days, because while he has appointed many of them and kept many legitimate reporters out, we still
Yeah.
have a responsibility that we've abrogated simply to kiss up to Donnie, and we're serving the same purpose. It's frightening to me to watch every aspect of American society show fealty to Donald and his minions, Stephen Miller chief among them, and of course Susie
Yep.
Wild
Yep.
and all the other morons that are behind them. But when I was in France, there was one thing that to have this documentary shown. There was a filmmaker came up to me and he said, "We still love Americans and the American culture, but it's frightening
Yep.
to us that your government now is worse than Turkey's." That's
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Did I never thought, and I'm of an age brought up, when we saw Nixon fall, that we thought this would never visit American shores. We stopped the cancer, but it turns out we didn't.
No, we're Orban's Hungary
Yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
this point. So, but
And
worse,
we're very
obviously.
hungry. Let's see.
Well, more and more people are getting hungrier because they
Yeah.
can't afford groceries anymore,
Well,
which is an old word that's making a comeback.
here's two. Yeah, what a whole word. Here's two things that I point to. The Reporters Without Borders has been issuing for 25 years an assessment of the freedom of the press across the world. When in their first one, the U.S. ranked 17th, and there was much consternation at the time because we said, how can the American Republic, which has enshrined in its First Amendment free speech, be 17th in a
Yep.
free press? This year, we're
Yep.
64th, and 50% of the nations now have an unfree press. 50% of the 180, and they cite Donald Trump as one of the big problems behind it.
Mhm.
And so that is bothersome to me. But what really causes me a even more consternation is watching the weaponization against us. When he talks about lawfare, when he talks about
Yep.
weaponization, he completely denies that he's the impetus behind it.
Right. Well, but this is what he always does. Every accusation is a confession.
Yeah.
And I think most of the time he's aware of that. He kind of gets a creepy joy out of
Yes. I've seen
pretending
that
that
look on his face.
yeah, that he's the victim. Nobody's ever been treated more unfairly than Donald has, right? Nobody's ever been treated more unfairly than the January 6th criminals. Nobody's free speech has ever been impinged upon to the extent his has. Nobody, blah, blah, blah. So when he says that, when he accuses Biden of having you weaponized the DOJ, and we see what has happened to the DOJ in the last year, how
18
many, it
months.
seems like forever,
Yeah.
a year and a half.
Yeah.
It's devastating, shocking, though not surprising. Like the Civil Rights Division doesn't exist anymore. To all
They've
intents and
renamed it the
purposes.
Trump's Rights Division.
Yeah, I mean, literally, the DOJ is Donald's defense firm, and there's no rule of law anymore. So for him to go out and say these things is maddening. But it's hard not to let it. It's hard to not to be impacted by it because it is so infuriating. But we can't. We can't let everything, every blow land, because we won't be able to survive it.
Well, that's a good point. And then,
Yeah.
there's a question that this filmmaker from Romania wanted me to ask you, and so I'll ask it. If you get a chance, ask her, because she saw you in the documentary. She said, is there any hope for the United States? And you would know because you're close to it. So I said, I'll ask her. So there you go. I'm just asking the question. Any cause for hope, Mary?
What a concept. Yes, of course. If there weren't, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. We would say, I hear Tuscany's really nice.
It is.
Which it is, because
Yeah,
I want
it
to
is.
live there. Yeah. Like we'd be leaving the country, because why would we keep subjecting ourselves to this horror on a daily basis. So there's absolutely hope, but it also depends on what you mean by the United States of America. I
Right.
think the only way in which there's hope for our future is if we have a very serious reckoning with how we got here and put in positions of power leaders who are absolutely willing to make difficult choices, decisions about what America needs to be. And I think that kind of means starting from scratch. That means getting rid of all of these corporatist um, establishment Democrats who maybe are good on some things and turn around and vote to confirm judicial nominees that won't say definitively that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Looking at you, Sheldon Whitehouse, we need to clean our house too and recognize that if America is going to become the kind of country we need it to be, then that means taking responsibility for what we've done,
How do
taking
we do that?
responsibility for the damage we've done to our allies and people around the world, and the horrors that have occurred because Donald was put back into the Oval Office and allowed people like Elon Musk to do things like dismantle USAID, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's hope if Americans realize that this country cannot be powerful in the way it has been in the past. It has to restructure entirely its relationship with the rest of the world and the government's relationship to the American people, I think.
Here's the question really is, look, Donald Trump came out and said, and I could go, I could talk about Scott Dissent, who came out and said Americans, the real reason for the immigration thing was to get rid of, immigrant workers because Americans want those jobs and Americans want to work overtime. No, we want to be able to work a 40-hour work week and not have to have 2 or 3 side gigs and be able to afford education and health. The Congress adjourned for Christmas without taking up portable health care while they get free health care and free pay for
Yep.
life. The
Yep.
presidential PEP secretary, I won't call her the press secretary, the PEP secretary, all she needs is her pom-poms. And she comes out and smiles and tells us she's going on paid maternity leave, which millions of Americans cannot get. So they got theirs. It's always about, and they're it's the fight in this country is among the haves versus the have-nots, not white versus black, not male versus female, but the haves versus have-nots. And some of them voted for Trump, many of them did not. But how do you create a coalition of people that go across both party uh, lines? Because that's where the 80% of America is, somewhere in the middle.
Well, unfortunately, as we're learning, things have to keep getting worse. I hate saying that, but and it seems like the one thing that gets people to pay the most attention isn't the fact that without USAID, over 400,000 children died last year unnecessarily. It's not that. It's not even. It's not enough that fascist organizations like ICE are killing Americans in our streets. That's that definitely pushes the needle, but it's still not enough. What is enough? High gas prices, apparently. Um,
Yes.
so if it's
You
going
can
to be
kill all them little
that,
boys that you want, but I need me gas. Yeah, that's
well, and and it's I think farmers are waking up to the fact that they put the wrong party in charge of things, and gas prices are going to make everything else more expensive. So if it's economic hardship, well, guess what? It's here and it's going to get worse. If that is going to tilt things, then I guess that's it's unfortunate. I would love to live in a world in which people make the right decisions, not based on harm that's being done to other people, even if it doesn't impact them. Unfortunately, we live in a world in which many people make decisions based on self-interest. And if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. And
Do
I'm not
you?
wishing that on anybody. I'm just saying this
No,
is the
no.
reality. And it's going to get worse because look who's in charge and look what they're doing. They
So do
don't
you have
care if
hope?
gas is
No.
$200 a barrel because they're billionaires.
Right. That yeah. Well, well, and Donald Trump says, of course, we blockaded their blockade of a navy that we destroyed twice
Is
over
that
after
like,
we.
yeah, is that like checkmating a checkmate? Like,
Yeah.
how's that a thing? Wow.
It makes no damn sense. It just makes no
Yeah.
damn sense. So
And
that's it.
he doesn't, I love when your Kentucky comes out.
Yeah, that just makes no damn sense. Put your paints on, honey. That's my mom would say, "Put your paints on." I go, "How many coats of paint should I put on, mom?" So, but you look at what has gone down, and the fact that you're right that it's economic hardship. But Donald Trump comes out and and by the way, you look at the stock market, it's still strong, but that's because most Americans aren't involved in it, and about 20
Right.
companies control it, and they're all friends of Donnie's. So,
And that's completely artificial. I mean,
yeah,
that is being manipulated
yeah,
because it's the
yeah.
only number he cares about other than poll numbers, and they can't manipulate those. So they're going to
Well, he
manipulate the stock
tries.
market. Well, sure.
He
Yeah.
does. But to your point, all right. So he says the economy has never been better. The job situation is great. And I remind everyone that he fired the people who gave him the economic numbers at the beginning of the administration. So you can't trust any numbers you get out of him now.
Oh,
And Donald has always already proved, and so has everyone who works for him, that they truly don't understand math and
right.
percentages. It's 600% cheaper. Well, some people say it's 600, some people say 30. But that's and so do you I guess the question is, do you think that American people are cognizant enough of the facts that we can create a situation that overcomes Donald Trump's bullshit and his mastermind of grifting?
Yeah, listen, I think there will always be a 20%, give or take, maybe 25% of any population that is
Nuts?
willing, yeah, well, or fascist
Right.
or Christian nationalist who like what Donald's doing and are willing
Yeah.
to pay more for gas because they love it how racist and anti-immigrant and weird he is, I guess. But there are those people who don't really pay attention,
Right.
but they understand that their paychecks aren't going as far. They understand that their paychecks are actually getting smaller. They understand that they can't go on vacation or they can't go on that road trip because, unlike Sean Duffy, it's not being sponsored by big corporations. Donald can say all he wants. The economy's amazing. Prices are going down. Inflation is going down. Gas prices are lower than they've ever been. But as soon as somebody goes to fill up a tank of gas, they know that it's twice as much as it was 2 months ago. So, again, there are some people who are so deluded, they will say, hey, I'm doing my part to make America great again by not getting Social Security anymore or by, becoming homeless because gas and groceries are so, yeah, there are going to be those people in addition to the Nazis and the misogynists, etc. But that is not um an overwhelming, that is not
Number.
enough people to keep him or the Republican Party in power, which is why, of course, they are very cognizant of the fact that they will lose in November if the elections are free and fair.
Yeah, well, and voter suppression, I believe, is a real thing. I
Mhm.
encourage everyone, if you'll protest, and I can't tell you the number of people I've interviewed at these No Kings rallies who I ask them if they vote and they say no, and I go, well, Jesus, if you'll spend 8 hours protesting, create a poster, march around in the heat with the you could stand in line for 2 hours and cast a ballot, no matter how
Mm-hmm.
difficult to make it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
check 2 weeks before before the election to make sure you haven't been purged from the rolls, but
Right.
make sure you're there, stand in line, and for the love of God, vote and
Right.
not only that, drive old people to the polls and volunteer
Yep.
on phone banks and volunteer to work in the precincts and do all of that, and maybe we got a shot this fall. I hope we do. And here's what gives me hope, and this is I wanted to get your take on this. So I'm talking to a MAGA. This woman, she had the Mar-a-Lago duck face. I mean, she's all in. She has she she uh she said she was there in France celebrating her 35th birthday, said she had voted for Trump 3 times and will never vote for him again because he lied to us. He got us involved in wars when he said he wouldn't. He said he would make life easier. It isn't. She now claims that Donald Trump is part of the deep state. When I asked her what the deep state was, she said it's Donald Trump and Elon Musk wanting to replace white people with lesser species. And I go, what
Oh
do you mean?
my.
I said, like, what do you mean, cats and dogs? And now what she said, I won't repeat because it was very racist. But here's a woman who went
Wow.
all in for Donald. I mean, really all in for Donald. And now is
Yeah.
saying that MAGA no longer supports Donald.
Well,
So
I mean, why should they, right? Because in addition to the horrific economy, um, there were two main issues, things that he promised them: no more wars and releasing the Epstein files. He's done everything. He's been doing backflips to prevent the release of the Epstein
yeah,
files. And now he, um, even though it wasn't a war, but there was this incursion into Venezuela to kidnap the Venezuelan president. It's just the fact that the world was just like, okay, whatever. It's just shocking to me. He's threatening the sovereignty of Greenland. Um,
right. Our ally
he is blowing up boats in the Caribbean Sea
for no
for no
reason
reason.
and
And of
no
course, he
evidence.
started an actual war against Iran, which is one of the most depraved and stupid things anybody could do. Because look how that's turning out for us. As a result of that, we're weaker. Our military that has a practically $1 trillion annual budget has been shown to be a failure in this regard.
Yeah,
And who's gotten stronger as a result of Donald's stupid, illegal, unconstitutional war of choice? China,
you're on.
Russia, Iran.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
to that point, when little Marco Rubio, remember little Marco? This is a story about little Marco. He shows up
Yeah.
because now that the PEP secretary is on holiday, paid maternity leave, Donald is assigned the first one to replace her because he's worn enough hats. I think he's even Donald's personal Uber driver. Marco shows up into the briefing room, and then he has little JD Vance, and God only knows who's going to conduct the next briefing. But Marco showed up there and said, "Look, all we want is things to be as they were." And I said, "But they were as they were until you started the war."
They were as they were. Exactly. Oh my God.
And now there's going to be like, you got to pay a toll to go through the Gulf of Hormuz because of Donald. And he's got a blockade around the blockade, and he's defeated the Navy and completely obliterated him. None of this makes any sense. None of it in any way stretch of the imagination is related to reality. This is Donald Trump trying to, I know he was trying to deflect from Epstein by threatening and starting the war. Now he needs to talk about Epstein to deflect from talking about the war. So
Yeah.
I go back to it and I go, I hope that the Democrats have their shit together enough to win back both the House and the Senate. I don't think there will be any move against Donald until then. But you see Republicans now moving, especially Massey and others who have lost their seat because they're not far enough to the right for Donald. You're seeing some pushback, which I think will only grow after the midterm election. And I think that's what Donald's scared of.
Yeah, I don't credit the Republicans with having any spine or ethics or morality at this
Well, of
point. They're
course
all
not.
just vile. But because even Massey probably voted with Donald 96% of the
Yeah,
time. It's just that he wanted the Epstein files released, and the fact that Donald so doesn't should tell us something. Um, but I think in the Senate, the turning point is that Bill Cassidy
yes,
lost his primary because Donald endorsed the person who was challenging him. And I mean, good, because Bill Cassidy, a medical doctor, voted to confirm Robert Kennedy, knowing that that sociopath just wants to kill children with easily preventable diseases. And of course, now Donald has endorsed Ken Paxton, not the incumbent John Cornyn. So, you know better than most that the Senate is just a club, which is
yes,
why Senate Democrats are so disappointing. And they really take care of their own. Remember, every single Democrat voted to confirm Marco Rubio because he had been
yep,
one of them, and he's now just a full-fledged Nazi. And I also who has so much time on his hands that he could have 5 full-time jobs, including taking care of the Diet Coke button in the Oval Office.
yeah,
So,
and the
you know,
presidential Uber driver. I mean,
yeah,
on weekends he probably is
yeah,
the caddy.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
I know we're close to the end of the half hour. You have to go, but I'll ask you any last words about this wonderful slush fund and what you see coming up in November.
I think we're learning that, as I said earlier, our government is non-functioning, and I don't think that the Senate Republicans are going to do anything or be able to do anything. So let's say, for example, the Senate Republicans actually get their acts together and forbid the DOJ from having this fund. You and one army, Donald and Blanche are going to do whatever they want. So I think we are tragically about to witness this travesty of people who committed serious crimes against our country getting reparations with our tax dollars, and yet we've never been able to do that for the ancestors of people we enslaved for 8 generations. So,
Right, we can't even
fascinating.
get tax relief. We can't get decent education for our kids. But
There's
those
no
who
Department of Education anymore. So,
well, we
yeah,
can't spell education anymore. That's
yeah,
and Donald
yeah.
Trump and what did he call vegans the other day? Vegans. I mean he can't even pronounce the
Is
word.
that?
So these vegans, I'm going. Oh, are
Yeah.
they from a
Well,
different planet? What
that's what I was
are
thinking.
they?
It's like, isn't Vega a planet in some other
Yeah.
star system? Oh my God.
So with that said, what would you like to
Well,
plug, Mary?
I would love it if everybody would go to Substack and check out my newsletter there. It's called The Good in Us. Um, and what else? I've got a YouTube channel, Mary Trump Media YouTube channel, and we are on all the socials, barely hanging on by a thread, thanks to the fascist takeover of every single one of them. But
Yes.
at least it looks like Katie Miller, who has 50,000, no, yeah, 50,000 subscribers, which is not a lot, by the way. She's
Right.
apparently in talks with Paramount to get her own show.
Well, you gotta you gotta love that.
Oh, I do. I
She
do.
can she can attract enough people to fill my Cherokee Jeep, and other than that,
Pretty much.
so, with that said, oh, I could do these all day. So with that said, this is Just Ask the Question. I want to thank you, Mary, for being here. I'm Brian Karem, and we will catch you next time.